Marco, thank you for your answer, for your presentation. And now I leave the floor to Simone, who's introducing the next speaker.
Yes. Carlo, do you want to say something?
No, just I'll write to Marco.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so thank you, Marco. Great work. It's now the turn of Ambra and Francesca, so I would ask you to please share your screen. And in the meantime, let me introduce Awa Ambra Seck and Francesca Miserocchi, who are both doing their PhD in political economy in the United States at Harvard University, and will present a study titled The Economic and Social Integration of Refugees in Italy, a pilot study. The floor is yours. You should unmute yourself, Francesca.
Okay, so now I'm unmuted. Okay, so thank you for this opportunity. So the motivation of our study is the dramatic increase of arrivals of asylum seekers over the past 5-6 years, which, oh, sorry, I think I cannot, okay, which led also to created also social tensions that sometimes culminated in acts of physical violence and discrimination, as we can see from these headlines from local newspaper articles. And so, like, in such a context, we think that it's crucial to develop a better understanding of the determinants of economic and social integration. And in particular, we focus in this study in trying to understand how the city in which asylum seekers are assigned to influences their outcomes. So the questions that we will try to answer are two. So the first one is whether the match between the destination city's labor market and the labor market of migrant city of origin influence the economic integration of refugees. And the second question is whether the match between cultural beliefs of destination city and migrant city of origin influence the social integration of refugees and asylum seekers. Therefore, I mean, we try to investigate what is the influence of the neighborhood environment on social and economic integration. And the main novelty of this study is therefore to and also to collect like new measures. So I will start by like briefly describing the allocation process, because like all of our identification strategy relies on the quasi-random assignment of refugees to different cities. And then I will describe the pilot study that we conducted on summer 2019, and then Ambra will describe the empirical strategy and preliminary results. So something about the context. So the assignment of migrants, basically as migrants arrive in Italy, they are first redirected to the closest hotspot where they are identified, and then they are sent to regions. And basically assignment to region depends on regional availability, and each region has like fixed quotas. And quotas are designed based on population size, GDP, and services. And then, like, once migrants are assigned to a region, then they are assigned to a city, and they're assigned either to CAS center or SPRAR centers. And our strategy is based on the assumption that we will try to test. Basically, the assumption is that individuals are quasi-randomly allocated to cities in the sense that they cannot choose the city where they will end up in the SPRAR or CAS. So these are, so we will try to focus on, so we conducted our survey in SPRAR, but we would like to focus both on CAS and SPRAR. So this is the geographical distribution of people hosted in CAS and SPRAR, and we see that we know that CAS are like bigger, and like 80% of asylum seekers were hosted there, and asylum seekers remain in Kassenspraar from 6 months to 2 years, and then they are free to relocate and move wherever they want. So something more about like the pilot study. So, the data that we will try to use to answer the research questions that I outlined before. So we will use data on about data from the pilot study, and then we will also use data like public administrative data at the municipality level to get information on city characteristics. And finally, we will use some data provided by the Ministry of the Interior on demographic characteristics of people hosted in CAS. So about the pilot, so most of the variables we were interested in were not asked before, and therefore in August 2019 we conducted a survey among 89 refugees and asylum seekers. And we conducted the survey in 3 Italian regions, in Piedmont, Emilia-Romagna, and in Apulia, and we visited 24 cities, which you can see in the map, because we wanted to have a city variation to estimate our equations. So this basically participation was incentivized with a lottery, and the prize was a phone, and the survey was 2 hours long, so it was quite long and included questions on like demographics, current and past employment, family history, interactions with Italians, values, beliefs on Italian values, social networks, and also questions on like relocation choice. So these are some of the main demographics of the people that we interviewed. So the respondents were like quite young. They were 27 years old on average. 30% of them were female, and their migration journey was quite long. The average was 14 months, and they had on average 4 years of educations. And they came from 27 different countries. The most represented countries were Nigeria, Mali, Ivory Coast, and Gambia, and the majority of them arrived by sea, even though the majority of women arrived by flight. So, and these are some descriptive statistics on employment, which is going to be our dependent variable. And we see that roughly like 50% of the respondents are employed. And in Apulia, the labor market conditions seem to be a little more favorable to migrants, since probably maybe that's because we conducted the survey in summer. And these instead are our like main measure of social integration, that is the number of daily and weekly interactions with Italians. And the interesting thing here is that the median value of daily interaction is 0. The median is 0 daily interaction with natives, and these also relate to the study that was, I guess, that was presented before. And low interactions are correlated with lower probability of being employed. And we see like lower interactions for women with children and higher interactions instead for males with children. So, and finally, we also measured like prosociality through hypothetical dictator games and trust games. Okay, now I leave the floor to Ambra, who's going to explain the empirical strategy and preliminary results.
Yes, okay. So in terms of empirical strategy, we exploit, as Francesca said, the potentially quasi-random variation of assignment of asylum seekers to cities. So just to remind you, our main question is basically if we can assign asylum seekers to Italian cities within the reception system in a way that increases both economic and social integration. So what we want to look at is the assignment to a city labor market and social media, but given your background, and we want to understand how that influences your probability of both finding a job and interacting with Italians. So what we first need to do is to construct a measure of good match to a city, both as far as economics and social outcomes are concerned. Okay, so our measure of economic match, is going to be the share of people in the city of destination who work. Sorry, can you go back 4 slides?
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so this is
here.
Okay.
Here we go. Thank you. Is going to be the share of people in the city of destination who work in the same sector as the one in which the migrant worked before coming to Europe. And our measure of social match, in a way, is going to be a measure of belief match, which is basically going to capture the extent to which people in your region of assignment have beliefs that are similar to yours on core aspects of one's life. How do we construct that? We use some questions of our survey and some questions that were asked in the World Value Survey, a survey that is conducted in many countries in the world, which are basically going to ask how important each of these 6 domains are for you in life. And then there's like very much or not a lot. And these are family, friends, leisure, and politics, work, and religion. So we have these responses for people in Emilia-Romagna, Puglia, and Piemonte from the World Value Survey. And then we ask the same question to our asylum seekers and refugees, so that then we are able to understand how proximate, how similar they are to the people in the region they were assigned to. So what we'll basically use is this index, which goes from 0 to 1, which is increasing in belief proximity or cultural proximity in a way. Our estimating equation is going to be this one. So as I said, it's relying on the assumption that assignment to city is random or conditionally random, which means that we're able to regress the match, which is the economic match or the belief match, which is M, on integration. And our measures of integrations are going to be the probability of finding a job, or having Italian friends and interactions with Italians. We're going to control for individual characteristics that are available to officers that are allocating asylum seekers at the moment of their arrival, and to some city characteristics measured in 2001. So our main hypothesis is that the closer you are to, in a way, like the better the match, the higher the integration is going to be, either economic or cultural. Okay, so our identifying assumption is conditional random assignment of asylum seekers to cities, and which basically means that given some variables on which we're going to condition, assignment is going to be random. How do we validate this? We have 2 ways in which we try to do this. One is qualitatively, and the other one is quantitatively.
Ambra, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, so I'm going to be very fast on this. So qualitatively, we just spoke to people who guaranteed us that they didn't have information, basically, especially between 2013 and 2017, they had to quickly assign people to regions. And then we asked for data from the Ministry of the Interior, who are kind of corroborating these hypotheses. And I'm going to skip on this real quickly to show you some preliminary results. So in terms of economic match, the coefficient is not significant, but we do see that there is a positive correlation between the good match, being a good match, and the probability of being employed. In terms of social interaction, we do find that proximity in beliefs is increases in a way daily interactions with Italian by 25%, which is a lot. Another important thing that we did and we think is important is trying to understand whether there is a virtuous cycle of perceived proximity. So what we think is that if you are assigned to a city that is proximate in your beliefs, it might mean, as we have seen, that you're going to have more interactions with Italians, that it might be then in the future that you will perceive them to be less different from you. And then this is going to generate a cycle of, in a way, social integration. And this is what we are trying to provide evidence for, because we ask people how different you think people are from you. And as you see, the correlation between interacting with Italians and perceiving them to be similar to you is positive. So just to conclude real quick, from our pilot, we think we learned that being like the match to the city might matter both in terms of economic and social integration. these might generate a virtuous cycle of integration, which we think is extremely important to avoid social tensions and increase the employment rate of refugees. In terms of our next steps, we think that the pilot that Roberto Franceschi allowed us to do was extremely helpful for us to understand the rough distribution of our main outcomes variable that were not collected before, and also the main correlations at play. But now, what we would like to do is to use administrative data, so collaborate with administrations to replicate the study on a larger scale, and not with self-reported data, but with administrative data. And then if we succeed in doing that, we would like to conduct a larger scale survey based on the one of our pilot in order to test the mechanisms at play, determining both social and economic integration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. It's a really fascinating study, and I think that many of us look forward to know what the final results will be. So I will now open the floor to questions.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for your presentation. It's a very interesting project, and it's a really fascinating type of data that you're collecting. So I have actually several questions that I'd like to ask you, because I'm also working on similar topics. So I'll be very brief. So one is, given that you're asking all these questions, I was wondering whether you also asked something about the type of visa that they have, what type of protection that they have, what type of status they currently have, and how long it took them to obtain their current status. I think that is worth eliciting if you're thinking of scaling up the survey. Secondly, I was, so if I understood correctly, maybe I missed something, but basically your measure of match is based on like employment experience and values, but both of these actually are elicited at time t. So potentially these are clearly endogenous to the outcome, right? So I wonder how you deal with these, whether you can rely on some predetermined characteristics, or whether some values like religion presumably is more likely to be predetermined, whereas, I don't know, attitudes toward friendship or whatever else is more easily changed over time, or maybe there's some literature that suggests what values are more easily changed than others. So, but I'm slightly concerned that both your measure of matches are endogenous, basically.
Can I respond real quick?
So, yeah. And then we will have another question from Carlo.
Yes, good. Thank you for your questions, Tommaso. So in terms of visa like status, we did ask. So we asked them which kind of protections they had and in which status they were. So if they were awaiting for the protection to be granted, or if it was already granted. So that's actually some data that we do have. In terms of endogeneity, yes, I partly agree with you in the sense that as far as values are concerned, it is a concern because we do elicit them after they have migrated. So one thing that we can bring as a, I guess, as help is that we do run the same test using the word value survey measure of the country of origin. So we did not report that because we have that for fewer respondents, but the coefficient is quite similar and it's positive. But I agree with you that perhaps using religion might be a better, so like slow moving values might be a better thing. In terms of employment, it is collected at time t, but we ask for employment at times t-1. So that maybe it wasn't clear, but like the measure of match is using employment, the last job that they had before coming to Europe. So that is perhaps less endogenous because it's not really determined by the city itself. I hope it helps.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Carlo?
Just a question. The definition of good economic match in some way obscure the possibility of complementarities, and this is, and also in the short run we can also it obscure the possibility of complementarities, and in the long run I see a kind of a trade-off with social mobility. So did you think about this problem?
Yeah, so I can try to answer. Yeah, I mean, it's not trivial that a better match, because we measure the match as the percentage of people working in the same sector in which you were working before arriving in Italy. And so, I mean, yeah, it's not trivial that a better match always leads to better labor market outcomes, in the sense that maybe it could also be the case that people have better labor market outcomes in cities where there are more jobs in services, for instance, or in some particular sectors. So, and then something interesting about like your question is that it's true that there may be complementarities, but I mean, another outcome variable that it would be interesting to measure is like relocation choice, because these people are forced to remain in the city of assignment for like 6 months or 2 years for a certain period of time, and then they can relocate. So maybe people like with a worse match then will relocate more or something like this. Yeah.
Okay, so we are already ahead of time, unfortunately. So I will thank again Francesca and Ambra